Good morning, everyone. People can join as they want this morning. I know it's an early start, but we thought we would get started. Hello. Well, maybe I'll stand up here because I actually can't see. I can't really see you all. Hello. Hi. Good morning, everyone. A really warm welcome to this side event. Thank you for joining us. I am Alex Frost. I'm a senior researcher at Mine Action Review. I've got a fantastic lineup of speakers for you today. So I will introduce them all and then we'll get started. So on my right here, we have Mr. Andrew Griffiths, head of the demining team at the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and he will start us off with some opening remarks. And then we have Lindsay Cottrell, Environmental Policy Officer at CEOBS, who will be presenting step 1 of the Greenfield tool on how to build an environmental profile using open source data. And then we have Bak Budon, Policy and Environment Advisor at MPA, who will be presenting step 2 of the Greenfield tool on environmental assessment and monitoring. Mr. Sebastian Kazak, Head of Program Performance and Learning at MAG, and he will be discussing how we can evaluate the long-term environmental and land use impacts of clearance. And last but not least, Dr. Anna McKean, researcher at CEOBS, presenting on reporting indicators and how the Greenfield tool can help standardize environmental reporting across Mine Action. We'll also be using Menti throughout the session to pose some questions, so please do join in when prompted. So without further delay, let's get started. Andrew, I'll pass over to you.
Cool, thanks very much. I'll stand up, keep the energy going. So, hey, thank you all for turning out reasonably early in a middle of a conference season. So it's great to have you here. You will be pleased to know that I don't intend to speak for very long. I want to allow the real experts in the audience enough time to give some real practical advice and assistance on how to approach environmental sensitivity in the mine action sector. But I did want to say a few words as to why, certainly for the UK, the research you're about to hear about, we feel is really, really important. And certainly for the UK, we're now seeing environmental sensitivity as an approach, as one of our key cross-cutting themes, sort of there with the more long-standing cross-cutting themes in our programs of conflict sensitivity and inclusion and gender. We feel it's up there, and that's the approach we intend to adopt for all our future contracts and agreements. For me, it's brilliant to see the, and I think you will agree when you hear this, the ability of the sector to sort of fill this particular gap in our understanding, to develop a new dimension as to how we approach mine action. For me, there are a number of reasons why it makes sense for mine action as a sector to take more account of environmental dimension. We know that possibly the bulk of the countries, the conflict-affected countries where the sector is most active, are also some of the most vulnerable to the consequences of climate change. We also know, and have to acknowledge, that demining as an activity itself contributes to environmental harm as a necessary part of the process. In terms, we have our own carbon footprint, and we have our own need to do some environmental damage in some circumstances. For example, when we have to strip back vegetation. But also, there is tremendous upside potential through land release to really deliver positive environmental impact, whether that's through biodiversity, conservation schemes, potential for the use of solar panels, opportunity to develop sustainable agricultural practices, and a lot of that work is already going on in the sector, and we'll hear some more about that today. And indeed, the sector is already motoring on this. We've heard about the update to the UNMAS, the incorporation of environmental considerations into the Seam Reap Action Plan, which I think is a really important step to mainstreaming. And of course, the Mine Action Review's own reporting on this, which has been really helpful in encouraging best practice. Above all, it's about how we can enhance the lives of the communities which we serve, and adding an environmentally sensitive approach adds another dimension to that. I think, as I sort of said in the plenary session, it also links back to one of the main themes that we heard right at the opening of the conference about the importance of mine action as an enabler of broader development objectives, and the importance of mine action sector situating itself at that nexus at a time when there are funding constraints, and being able to flag the variety of approaches and the variety of impacts that this sector can achieve is, I think, really important as part of our case for continued funding. So I'm going to stop there, and I will let the experts give you the really practical advice. Thank you very much.
Morning, everyone. I'm just going to push these slides on a bit because we have actually got, this is the first Menti, so this is an idea to keep you all awake. So if you can scan the code or just enter that, go onto the Menti website. We've just got two first questions to start us off. Can we switch over to Menti upstairs, please? Is that okay? Great. So if you hopefully will. So the first question here, how do you think organisations can best maximise the environmental benefits of mine action? So I think we've had one answer so far. Yeah, so we just wanted to get a bit of a flavour of what people were thinking. Yeah, good to see. I completely agree with local partnerships approach. I think that was definitely mentioned a lot yesterday if people came to the plenary, and also to the other side event that was Mine Action Review, talking about what examples have been happening already in the field, and a lot of them been pushed forward obviously by getting some great local partnerships together. Okay, and now we've just got one little bit of trivia, again just to keep you awake. So can we move on to the next question, please? So which of these facts about water isn't true? So 75% of a living tree is water, only 10% of water on the planet is fresh water and usable, most of the water in our oceans comes from asteroids, and 650 million people don't have access to clean water. I'll just give you a few minutes. Seconds, rather, because we've got to crack on. This is just to keep you awake. Oh, yes. So, actually, you're pretty good. Yeah, the right answer is B, because only 3% of all water on the planet is usable, of which 2/3 of that's frozen. So, we haven't got much, so we need to be very precious about what we've got. Okay, so can we switch back to the slides, please? Okay, so thank you everyone, thank you Alex, thank you Andrew, and hopefully yesterday you joined the plenary where we had an introduction to the Greenfield tool, and now I'm going to explain a little bit more about how the tool aims to deliver good environmental practice across mine action programmes. So as I was explained yesterday, the tool is split into two key parts. We have step 1 and step 2. And step 1, which is I'm going to be explaining a bit more in the next few minutes, requires information to be collected on the environmental setting or profile for the area where field activities are taking place. And then step 2, which Back's going to explain a bit after me, then asks these specific questions about activities and identifying and implementing measures that can minimise impacts. And that helps to consider risks on climate change as well and extreme weather trends. So the tool is available in either ArcGIS 123 or as a standalone Excel format, and all the resources and templates for Survey 123 and the Excel format are available to download from the website of the Environmental Issues and Mine Action Working Group, and we'll give you the links there at the end. And the ArcGIS Survey 123 has 3 templates, as you'll see here, which make up the tool, and the Excel format, obviously they're all lumped together, but presented on separate worksheets. And they mimic one another, but the Excel one also includes the option to include core environmental information about a programme, and this relates to things like the environmental policy of an organisation, environmental regulations, any donor or key stakeholder requirements, and any high-level climate information data that might be available, which should always be maintained for each country profile. We've not actually given a template for Survey 123 on this core environmental information, but if you look at the user guide, all the list of the information that we think you should maintain is included in there. So step 1 includes a set of questions to help establish the environmental setting of the area of interest and the potential environmental constraints and issues. So you see here on the right-hand side, this is what you'd see in Survey 123 once you've finished all the kind of admin information about the area of interest. This can be carried out for a group of tasks which might be located and have kind of similar constraints and issues associated with them. And these may be located in the same communal area or a slightly larger district. When choosing the size of this area, you've got to be quite careful, because if it's too big, you're going to have a few problems answering some of the questions because they're quite specific. So you just have to be a little bit, it depends on where it is. The completed profile then helps to inform the next step, step 2, to help evaluate environmental risks from certain mine action activities. And the profile can also be used to provide kind of baseline environmental information about the environmental setting in handover reports. And step 1 needs to be done as early as possible, because understanding the environmental setting and the sensitivity is key, and it's needed to make informed decisions, it's needed to help predict potential impacts, and for obviously choosing effective mitigation or management strategies. So 10 topics may seem like a lot, but it's really important that the environmental setting and its sensitivity is well understood, since obviously this determines how it can respond to change, how it reacts to stress and disturbance. So in the user guide, you'll see here that we've tried to make it fairly user-friendly by adding photographs. There's also Learn More tabs to include a bit more explanation as to why we're asking the information and what it actually means. This one here was the example for soils and geology. In the profile questions as well, they can be answered using a different number of sources of information. So each profile question, you'll see there's a set of icons, and this indicates how the question can actually be answered. So that's either through a combination of non-technical surveys and field visits, or it's through local consultation, or through the use of available online open source data. Now, open source data can be really useful, and it gives a high-level overview of environmental information, but it's always going to have to be supported by other information sources wherever possible. So this is a screenshot of the open source application which has been developed to support the tool. There is a heck of a lot of high-quality global data available, which can be useful to help establish an environmental profile for your area of concern. But it can be really difficult to navigate that data because it's all available in different platforms and it's quite hard to interpret. So the open source application aims to kind of bring this together and put the available data sets and make it a bit more simplified to interpret. And the open source data as I've said, is like a starting point, and it can be used to support field observations from regional and community engagement, and it can use all the information that can be collected as part from a non-technical survey. And the data layers on here have been categorized in the same way as the questions that are asked in the environmental profile to try and make it as easy as possible and to interpret that information. And there's also links there to where the actual information has come from, because we've not generated that data. This is from reliable data sources, so you can understand where that's actually come from as well. We recommend using Google Chrome to open it, because if you use that, you can then also use Google Translate. And the Google Translate function also means that the data layer information can be translated as well. So that's a really useful and helpful option too. So I'm just going to try and skip through an example for you. I'm not going to go through all the questions because there's too many, but we're going to look at an area of interest in Tor Tien Huy province in Vietnam. And as you can see here, the area is pretty flat, and it comprises mainly sandy soil. And it's a planted area with managed areas, which are quite young, and it's not terribly well established. So you can see here in the tiny speck on the right-hand side, the turquoise quadrant. That's actually, can I point on this? No, I can't. That's our area of concern in the middle of the map there. So this is the layer that's showing biodiversity. And checking on the open source application, it's identified there's actually no recorded protected areas or key biodiversity areas within our area of concern itself or within the immediate vicinity. But you see that the nearest one is to the northwest. It's around about 6 kilometres away from our area of interest. And when we scrutinise the data, we're actually, unfortunately, on the World Database, there's no information on what conservation management plans. Sometimes they give you a bit more detail on what conservation schemes are in place, but for this particular area, the data is not provided, so you'd have to do the local consultation to find that out. Then on soil, the open source data is actually quite limited, but it just reconfirms the need to actually support this with field observations. So it's showing here, as you can see in the brown, that most of it here is like a clay loam, but we know from field observations that there's also really sandy conditions there as well. So the open source data can give you so much information, but you need to support that by in-field observations as well, because we've got a mixture of sand and clay conditions here. So in the environmental profile, it also asks to consider land use and land use changes. And in the open source application, there's a really useful layer that gives information on land use analysis. So this is showing it for the year 2000. And as you can see, the big graph here on the left-hand side shows that our area of interest is predominantly this wetland tree cover. And you can see the surrounding areas you can see lots of orange and red. So that's showing the levels of urbanization and agriculture. And if we then swap, there's another layer in the platform that shows what happens in the following year, in 20 years later. So for 2020, we can see that we've got a real big expansion of, I'll just flip back as well so you can see the difference too. So we've got a real big expansion of urbanization in red and the crop-covered areas in orange. Our actual area of interest itself is actually increasing in tree cover. So you've gone from 30% to around about 60%. So it just re-emphasizes that this area of clearance is actually a little, you could almost call it an oasis of tree cover. So which is why it's important we think about the considerations of what we can protect. On land productivity as well, there's another useful layer here, which looks at, which is, again, we can look at it for our area of interest and also for the surrounding area. So for the area of interest, again, it shows that it's fairly stable and even increasing in productivity because we've got this increase in vegetation cover. But obviously, again, this isn't true for the surrounding area. You can see there's a mixture of stable and also signs of stress and decline you can see in the kind of orange and the red as well. So it's always important to look at not just your site, but also the surrounding area. This one here is indicative of areas at risk of flooding. And obviously this flags, again, it's high-level data. It doesn't actually show that our site is at risk of flood, but it means it's flagged it because it's an area nearby that's at a risk of flood. So there's a need, therefore, for local consultation to consider, and also to consider, you know, what nearby rivers have we got, what's the local topography, how flat it is, and speaking to local people, what's been the previous incidents of flooding events. And then we can look at even historic rainfall trends. And here you can see on the graph on the left-hand side, we've got an increase in total rainfall amounts for the region, and the wettest months are around September to December. Interestingly, there is another layer on here which looks at, which I'm not showing, but it looks at projected climate change. And this actually shows that the wet season's likely to shift to November. So again, it's just something, a bit of interesting information that you can look at and see, is that going to actually affect programming for your particular program? So this is the screenshot from the Excel version, and in both the Survey 123 and the Excel format, most of the questions have preset responses, and we've done this for two reasons. We've done it to obviously try and simplify and standardise the responses as far as possible, but also because this means it allows us to be able to produce this standardised environmental profile summary, environmental statements. So once all the profile questions have been completed, the responses to these questions then generate this environmental profile summary or statement. And these, as I said, are preset statements, and they are very generalised, but the idea is to help kind of summarise the data. And it flags and summarises the environmental issues and groups them into issues that are of high, medium or lower concern, not necessarily low concern, lower concern, depending on the responses that have been given. And it can be used, as I said, as a guide alongside your answers to the environmental profile itself to inform the next step too. So these are kind of the bunch of higher concern statements that have been pulled from the profile from this particular site. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it just gives you an idea of kind of some of the statements that get generated. Step 1 also asks whether there could be opportunities for environmental enhancement. So this could be something like planting native species after clearance has happened, removing invasive species that we don't want there, soil conditioning or soil improvement techniques. And even though these may not be able to be implemented by the Mine Action programme itself, they can be flagged. And it's important to flag these as early as possible and highlight these opportunities at handover. And opportunities for environmental enhancement, as I said, must be explored as soon as possible. And we've included a list of potential options in the Greenfield tool. It's not an exhaustive list, even though it is quite an extensive list. And it's just suggestions. And the tool is adaptable. You know, it's not set in stone. You can add to this list, you can take things out if you think it's not relevant for your particular programs or the region that you're working. So please do examine it, look at it, adapt it and update it to match your program's needs. So the tool outputs can be used in several ways, obviously to inform Mine Action staff themselves, but also others of the environmental issues and how these can be addressed. Completing step 1 produces the report, as well as that profile summary, and you can use both then, as I said, to inform step 2, which Beck's going to explain later. The profile information is also can be useful to include in these handover reports. And there's many benefits from the reporting and environmental data and sharing this with others. Environmental information can be provided to landowners and to inform them of future land use considerations, set out land management or even aftercare requirements. Sharing of data sets gathered can minimise the duplication of effort, and it helps to raise awareness across local and wider communities. It's also an important part, obviously, of due diligence and can protect the reputation of a mine action organisation, since it will set out what's known and what's been done to try and avoid and minimise environmental impacts wherever possible. And also, of course, helps to identify these opportunities for enhancing the environment and leading, hopefully, to more positive outcomes. Thank you.
you, Lindsay. So we've got another Menti question now. If you could bring that up. At what level of maturity do you think your organisation currently sits on embedding good environmental practice?
They are anonymous. We've no idea who's answering what back. So you can be
can
really honest.
You can be honest. That's really positive, though. We're at 3s and 4s. Yeah, brilliant. No one's at not yet started, so that's very encouraging. But we've still got to get to fully optimised. Well, hopefully by the end of this side event today, people will be able to know what steps they need to take to move themselves forward. So I'd like to hand over to our next speaker now, who will move on to step 2 of the Greenfield tool. Back, if you'd like to come up.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Lindsay, for a very great explanation of the step 1 of the environmental profile from the Greenfield tools. And good morning, everyone. My name is Beck. I'm from NPA as an advisor on policy and environment. So today I was glad to be here to show you how we conduct step 2, which is environmental assessment and monitoring. As you might note, to do an environmental assessment on other industry is quite a huge process, which might take months or even years, with huge documents and require a lot of expertise. So how we can simplify that and bring that to my action, and to help our staff in the field to actually do a basic and simple environmental assessment and monitoring. This is what NPA and COPS has worked together in multiple years to develop this tool and to also work with our field staff. So the Greenfield tools actually has been developed from the ground up. So we have tested with our field staff in different regions of the world. We have from Southeast Asia, in Middle East, and also in Africa, and also Europe as well. So we have tried our best to have all the feedback and the perspective from our field staff to understand how they can actually use the tools to support their work in a meaningful way. So after doing step 1 of environmental profile, you will have earned a summary of all the environmental features of the site that is relevant to your task. So using the report from step 1, the staff can now move to step 2, an environmental impact assessment and monitoring. This is a process of assess the risk, identify the risk level, and also include the mitigation measure that they can actually apply on the field. And with this tool, you can document all of the risk and document all of the mitigation measure that you apply on the field. And of course, to report it, depending on the countries, you can report it to the National Mine Action Authority or also the local government when requested. So let's dive deeper into the structure of the step 2. The step 2 is actually should be done at the task level. So let's say you have a clearance task, then you should done the environmental impact assessment. If you have a technical survey, or even if you set up a temporary camp for overnight stay at the site, this step should be done before and also after the operation of the task. But the tool has been designed to not duplicate the effort. So I will show you actually how it should be done on the field before and after the operations. And this should be done by the site supervisor, or in our case, in many cases, it's the team leaders of the task. In order to do this step, it is required to consult with the report from step 1. And this step 2 will include 2 major parts. the assessment and the monitoring. And we include 14 subjects we have defined to be relevant to our MyAction operation. So the tools in the step 2 consist of 4 pages. As you can see here is page 1 and page 2 in the Server 123 due to the limited of time today, so I can only show you how it is on Server 123, but it's pretty much the same on Microsoft Excel if you are using it. So on page 1 you will see is very basic administration information, but you will see here you can choose what tasks you are operating in the site. It can be clearance, and it also can be CAM and access route, but not all CAM and access route required to conduct this step 2. You can see on the tools here, it have provided a very concise definition of CAM and access route. And then moving to the next page is, we call it a filter or screening page. So in this, within these 5 questions, the staff only need to choose yes or no, so they can filter out the follow-up assessment. So they only need to answer questions that most relevant to their field operation. So let's, for example, if this operation doesn't use any machinery system, and the staff choose no for this question, then all of the assessment for machinery will be removed in the next page. Here is I think here's the core of this part. So you will see here is 14 subjects. Within each subject there will be certain number of questions, but again it will depend on the response you provide in the previous page. And to answer this question, we have included the explanation of the terms right next to the question. As you will see here, the explanation for long-term and short-term impact, explanation for temporary or permanent, the likelihood of the impact, or the level of severity. And by answering these questions, the tools will then automatically assign the risk level for the field staff. So they don't need to identify the risk level by themselves, but the tools help them to identify the risk level to be medium, high, or low. This based on a simple matches we have developed using this tool. And after that, a list of mitigation measures will be proposed in the tools for certain subjects. So in here you can see there's a list of 13 mitigation measures for, I think this one is wildlife species. So this list has been tailored for our land release activities, and the staff only choose like applicable and the mitigation measure that they can actually apply on their field. After that, we will also ask them, is this covered in SOPs? This is we want to make sure that we have a good review of our SOPs. Like in the long term, we want to go back and review if we can include more mitigation measure into our SOP. So they will not be constrained by the SOP. And they will provide a subjective assessment of the risk. So by applying these mitigation measure, will the risk be lower, or they maintain the same, or even in some case, the risk even be higher. On the page 4, here's the page 4, you will see that all the response from the page 3 we will automatically move to page 4. So they don't need to redo all these questions, but actually to monitor the mitigation measure, monitor the risk, and this should be conducted after the work at the site is completed. There will be very simple questions on follow-up measures or to assess the effectiveness of the mitigation measure they put on the field. Is any further action required, or what is the scale of the potential benefit that we can bring to the community using these mitigation measures? So I think it's better to try to go through a question based on the example Lindsay has provided you before on the environmental profile of a task we did in Thừa Thiên Huế province of Vietnam. As you saw on the presentation, that this area is pretty vegetated with young trees, and it's actually a plantation. So during our clearance job, we actually need to remove some of these vegetation for our work. So if you choose yes, there will be follow-up question show up on, you see on the right side of your hand. If you say no, then there is no follow-up question, no follow-up assessment. So let's say we say yes, there will be 4 follow-up questions here. The first one would be, when would this impact occur, short-term or long-term? So in order to answer this question, of course, we don't expect our field staff to have expertise on doing environmental impact assessment. So we have provided an explanation here, and as you can see on the screen here, a short-term is defined that the consequences are immediate. So when we're cutting down these vegetation, you can see the consequences right away. So I would choose short-term. Moving to the next question is, would this impact be temporary or permanent? Again, we have provided a very clear and concise explanation on what is temporary and what is permanent. The permanent impact causes irreversible change. So when cutting down a tree, of course, you cannot think that the tree will grow again. So we have to replant the trees. So in this case, would be permanent. Same thing would be for the likelihood of occurring and the severity of the impact. For the severity of the impact, it required the field staff to read through this list of explanation so they can categorize it is mild, moderate, or severe. So we also have put some of the example or explanation on a certain subject of the impact to the people, to the diversity, or to the resources. By answering these questions, as you see below, above here, the risk levels is then automatically assigned to be at a medium level. So this is done by the tools itself internally. After that is a list of mitigation measures that the tools provided to the field staff, and they can choose from. You can see there is a little bit of code in the mitigation measure list here. So this code will actually help us to analyze in the long term which measure is actually applicable on the field in different programs. And then, of course, is it covered in the SOP? And with these measures in place, what's the residual risk? And this one is still maintained as medium. There is nothing to worry if even when you have applied all the practical mitigation measure on the field and the risk remain the same. This is because due to our capacity, we cannot go beyond some of the mitigation measure that we have provided here. So the risk is hardly minimized. But of course, in the tools, we know that there might be some additional measures that the local can come up with. The local staff, they are very creative and they understand the field much more than us. So we want to encourage them to propose new mitigation measures that they think and they know that it can benefit the environmental that they are working on. So we added this section for each of the subjects. This one is for vegetation. As you can see here, they can add all the measure. They can also give brief details of what measure they cannot apply at this stage, and also any compensation or enhancement measure that can actually be conducted at the site or after they have finished their work. And then after that, after finish all of the question on the page 3, the staff then can submit the form. So when they complete the site, they will go back to that form and go to page 4, which they will see all the previous response has been moved to the page 4, and they can go through again from each subject, from each risk, and then assess is these mitigation measure effective enough? Are there any further action required? What is the scale of potential benefit? There might be some benefit, and in many cases we see that there will be wider benefit that our merchant activities can bring. For example, removal of invasive species, and also what is the overall outcome to these. we have conducted a lot of piloting on the field, and we have learned a lot from our field staff. We learned a lot from this process, and what we can actually suggest when rolling this tool out in the programs around the world is that there's also essentially a need for a basic training on the environment, on the basic knowledge, and how to use the tools. So MPA has tried our best to have handbooks. We have created training videos. We are going to create training courses on environment, on UNMAS 7.13, and also on how to use the tools available to all our staff. This requires a learning curve, so don't expect the staff to understand the tools right at the beginning. It takes some time. The first time they're doing the tools might take like 2 to 3 hours, but after that, what we see is like a significant shorter times for them to fill in the form and to do an accurate assessment on the field. There is a significant increase in awareness of our staff when we apply this tool on the field, not only at management level, but also at the staff level. So they know where they are working at, what is the environmental features, what is the harm they might pose to the environment, and what can they actually do on the field to make their work better, to contribute more to the community in terms of environment. And as you have seen in Lindsay's presentation, is that we want to encourage more of the community involvement in the process. So including these questions when we do local consultation, when we do interview with the locals, actually bring us a lot of information, not only on environment, but also strengthen our relation with our community and bring us closer to the beneficiaries we are serving. Yeah, I think it's my question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you back and to Lindsay for that really comprehensive overview of the Green Field tool. I think it's really key that it stands out as a key resource for driving implementation in the sector. And it's clear that it's been really thoroughly tested. It's accessible to all. And while some training is needed, you don't need to be an environmental expert to use it. And it's brilliant that it's also raising the environmental awareness of the staff at the same time as, they're learning how to use the tool. So we've got another Menti question for you now. Ooh, straight in. I love that. What support and help does your organisation need to deliver more? So training and capacity building is way ahead here, followed by technical guidance and ring-fenced funding. So I think that's something that is going to become available more and more in the sector. Obviously, there's the training that goes with the Green Field tool, but there is also Lindsay can tell you more about the training that UNDP are proposing on the environment. So yeah, hopefully that's something that we can talk about more. Okay, so on to our next speaker now. Sebastian, please come on.
Click to the right. All right. Yeah, good morning, very morning. MAG, we have done an impact assessment, so basically afterwards. We looked at impact now before, while setting up the task and so on, what do we need to know? And MAG looked more at the aspect, later impact assessment, 10 years later. And we sampled thousands of sites, you will see an example in Cambodia. This was done with the support of Impact. Impact is known to many of us through REACH, like the NGO on data information management support and so on. And they have actually 130 staff here based in Geneva, etc. And they work a lot on the environment. And so that's why we partnered with them to do this research. And thanks to funding from FCDO, it was possible to do this. So, as you know, MAG has been there for, since 1992. So quite some time. But we looked at the last 10 years for this exercise. And I mean, there are other studies out there which highlight the rapid conversion of cleared land into agricultural use. I mean, it's a lot of like post-war people who were out, fled to Thailand, etc., returned. There's a lot of population growth, access into areas that are good for agriculture, etc. So there are many factors which are not so much linked to mine action itself. Yeah? But so we wanted to combine the existing studies with the more environmental lens and the mine action experience. You will see on the map, sorry. The mapping is the typical bombing data from the Vietnam War. So the eastern part of Cambodia, so it may be looking a little bit unfamiliar for those who look at the Cambodian maps usually. That's the area where cluster munitions came down. And the western part, of course, is with the famous K5 mine belt along the border with Thailand and other areas. So let's look at the research objectives. We agreed with impact. And so we wanted to combine the understanding of the environmental with the social impact. And the focus will be, as you see, on land cover. We already had quite a bit of interesting information from Vietnam on the vegetation, so this will come back, also the soil. And we wanted to come up with a not too technical, difficult system, but that can be replicated also for future studies, and with the capacity of our own information management staff and not always relying on external people to do this type of assessment. And we feel we've got quite far with that. So it looks really feasible to repeat this also in other countries. And so, of course, this is about remote sensing. So using available data on the internet, using Google Earth, Landsat imagery is really good. We thought we would have to buy more, but by now the quality is so high, it was really available. And then it was mapped like it's really on the ground. So we talked to the communities, we did focus group discussions, we did key informant interviews. So that's then the linkage with our community liaison staff with the technical experts on the ground to undertake this study. 2 areas. So like I said, in the west with the landmines, unexploded ordnance from the fighting, and in the east, more the cluster munition impact close to the border to Vietnam and Laos. So the task sites, that's a bit specific language to the way they're classified in Cambodia. But what's called a C1 site has been cancelled after non-technical survey. So the old survey, sometimes usually years old, can then be reviewed, and people have started using that land, and there haven't been accidents for the last 3 years, have been continuously used and so on. So they are being cancelled by non-technical survey. These are the C1 sites. Then the C3, you see here in red, these are the really cleared sites. And this example only shows the MAG areas, but usually also other operators have been working in that area. But to give you a clearer picture here, this is what, in this case, was done by MAG. And then the control sites, which is, I think, a really important aspect for this study. We used control sites as well. So within a kilometer range of an area that is also with trees or shrubs, grassland, etc., were selected to make a comparison between these 3 types, 2 sites and the 3rd set and control sites. So just to see the sample we used, so in the west it's a 951 C1 sites, 561 C3 sites. These are like 32 square kilometers of cancelled land, almost 14 square kilometers of cleared land. In the east, basically there is little cancellation. That's why it's in red. It was not significantly, statistically enough, but it's just the case. It started later, the NTS was better. There is very little bit of cancellation happening there. So the east shows 27 square kilometers in more than 200 sites for clearance. And you see the numbers for the controlled sites, 212 for the west, 242 in the east. Just to give you an example, it's quite a serious sample and study from the volume of data we could analyze. So easy to see, just really comparison 2013, 2023. It reminds me of what you showed from Vietnam. So in the 10 years back, Still much more green, and when you move over, you see much more yellow, which means cropland, and even starting with some plantations in that case. And the red areas, of course, are the clearance areas. So we take like 1 year, 2015, and then go back for the clearance like the year before, the year after, and then 10 years forward. And so when we start in 2003, you see like the deciduous, the bright green forest has, so the falls that trees with the, I had to look it up, when the leaves fall down, so it's not the permanent green trees. Really reduced, so you see the trend over the total time, but even before clearance, already a lot of cropland was opened, and this will be one of the main findings, and maybe for discussion, that actually the clearance took place before clearance. Yeah. So you know the famous village deminers study and so on Cambodia. That's really about what do people already do in their own control without us coming there as international capacity, and so to do the full clearance. This is very clear that people cleared the land before us. The same you can see with the three C3 plots here. So really areas we cleared in the end. So the same thing, already cropland before, then an increase after clearance, and an even more increase over time. Also the rice plantations, the top line you can see is increasing. So key summaries just on the land cover analysis. Definitely cropland expansion, forest decline, and as I said, before clearance and after clearance. That's the most significant years. And then this, we call it also like the duality. So it's really important for us to understand why clearance already starts before we actually do the clearance. And this is in landmine areas, not just the cluster munition. For cluster munition, it's not so surprising that people have been using that area. But for the clearance areas, I find it quite concerning. And we want to overlay it also with the very good data from Cambodia on accidents, which is still something we want to do. And the study is not yet final to be published, so maybe we can include that analysis as well. So the community perceptions, as we said, we spoke to the communities. They all reported clearance before, clearance of the land before the landmine clearance. It's all about agriculture in this area, really, the majority of what's happening. People are land clearing it by burning or manually removing the mines. And after clearance, we can see that some areas have been abandoned because probably the quality of the soil was not that good, and preference for other areas. And especially you can see a shift in agriculture towards more mechanization, more use of fertilizers, etc. Another environmental analysis now, you're looking at 4 aspects: vegetation loss, soil erosion, soil moisture, and the carbon sequestration. So again, a picture very clear, above very little cropland, and below basically fully used for agriculture. So let's start with the vegetation loss. On the bar on the left, in the center, again, is the year 0. That's where the clearance took place during that year. And you can see during that year is the highest vegetation loss, but it already starts before. Yeah? And the top row is the cancellation sites, the bottom row is the clearance sites. So yes, the vegetation loss was higher where the clearance then took place. But also the clearance already started earlier where the cancellation is noted. Okay. On the right side, soil erosion, also easily visible. The white, lighter colors is where the landslides took place, etc. And the erosion has removed the soil. So that's just possible by analyzing satellite imagery, Google Earth. Soil moisture is really interesting. So you see the 3 different graphs. On the top is actually the control side. The medium is the cancelled land, C1, and C3 is the lower one. So the the moisture is higher in the control sites and the lowest where we have used machines, where we have done the clearance and have been on. So it confirms also what yesterday the FAO study, and careful with using machines when there's a certain 22% of moisture, etc. So I think that's something for the sector on the technical side to really look into more. Carbon loss or carbon sequestration, so the capacity of the plants to absorb, to store carbon dioxide. And there are two different ways it was assessed, the results basically confirm the same, of course, like the bioloss from the canopy analysis, looking at the tree coverage. Again, year 0 is the red one in the center where the clearance during that year took place, and that was the time of the highest carbon loss. It continues again, still over the year after, and then there's not much left. Findings, summary. Vegetation loss, so the tree canopy, the height of the tree coverage goes down over the years. Soil erosion is detectable and definitely an issue, and discussed with the communities why that's the case, and we have discussed quite a few ways how that could be mitigated better in the future. Soil moisture, as mentioned, some practices we might improve across the board as operators. Carbon sequestration, no surprising findings. For MAG, what does it mean? I mean, the agricultural land, the demand for this land drives the land use change, but even before site clearance, I think that's really relevant for us when we look at mine risk education as well, exposed owner risk education, etc. And need to overlay this data also with the excellence, etc. We have a chance to really look over the trends of the environmental impacts when we look back, like 10-year-old data, etc. The comparison is really good, and it will help us to frame our future interventions to look at the direct vegetation loss, also indirect through the agricultural land development, etc. What's avoidable, what's unavoidable? As we said, we have to use machines in some places, etc. So let's look at the short term, also the long term, and that's the interesting point of this study, that it's really long term. That's it. Maybe one word on this village demining, because I'm sure you'll be worried and wondering how is this happening. So what I think is the village demining was very much that people don't want to know it's dangerous, so they hire others, and these were like the former fighters and so on who did the clearance, but only in their own area of land where people cultivate. And so they really minimized the risk for themselves, but they also know that people who had enough money basically hired others to clear the land. So they were just giving the risk, passing it down to the poorer people. And we know that there were lots of accidents, and there still are in Cambodia. So it is worrying, but then it's not the full clearance, and that's why it's so important that we come and do the proper clearance of the entire area according to international norms. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. I think it's so important that we're building that evidence base and really understanding those impacts. Can we have the next Menti question, please? Go back one, I think. Oh, we'd already answered it. Oh, sorry. How important do you think environmental issues are regarded by mine action beneficiaries? Okay, so we've got a real range of answers here. But it looks like number 2 is the highest one, and it would be interesting to understand a bit more about that. And actually, I guess, how mine action beneficiaries then, if they're going on to use the land, you know, if you're talking about soil moisture and those kind of things, you know, for agriculture, that's also very important. So there's some awareness raising there that potentially needs to be done around that. Okay, so finally, our last speaker. Oh, sorry, there's a trivia question, my mistake. Can we have the next question, please? So which of these facts about soils is not true? We've got one, oh, a few more to come. I won't reveal it yet. Okay, so it's actually A. It is estimated that half of all species live in the soil. So, very high. Okay, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for taking part in that, and I'll hand over to Anna now.
Can I have my slides, please? Oh, it's here. Okay. Morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here with us so early in the morning. I will be talking about environmental reporting indicators. They're not part of the Greenfield tool, but Greenfield tool helps to find the answers and report to them. Environmental reporting indicators are part of our project, one of our deliverables with NPA and the project funded by FSDO UK. So reporting indicators will help to report to donors. They will help to communicate and monitor environmental performance of the programs, as well as help to improve climate and environmental outcomes for local communities. So the set of these indicators that we provide, they will help to standardize reporting approach and also set a framework for environmental reporting in mine action. We took into consideration UNMAS 713 as well as a technical note, and we are very grateful to MAC and Halo Trust for all the support and in the consultation process and all other stakeholders that helped to develop these reporting indicators. And before I move forward, let's establish what is an indicator. Indicator is a characteristic which helps to describe an existing situation and to track changes over a period of time. So we can report according to different categories. The first category is reporting about a specific task, for example, as a part of the handover documentation, which could include some incidents. We can report as a case studies where we would like to share the good practices and lessons learned with the others. And the category 3 is when we report as a program performance, when we want to report to donors and stakeholders. On the slide on the right side, you can see the guidance, the document that we developed that everyone can download about the indicators that we propose and how to report according to them. At the end of the presentation, Lindsay will share the link and a QR code where you could go to the AIMA working group where everything will be available to download, and the Greenfield tool is free to use for everyone, so it's easy available. When we were developing these reporting indicators, we looked into different available guidances, frameworks, and indicators, as well as the requirements from donors for reporting in the field of environment and mine action, as well as we looked into different other spheres like development or other areas that their indicators could be relevant for the field of mine action. So some of them were very relevant, some of them had some relevance, and some of them had limited relevance. You can see on the slide what we looked into, but this is not a limited list. We looked into many more other things. So we came to the conclusion that available reporting indicators were not matured enough, they didn't have a consistency, and were not directly comparable. So that's why we developed indicators which had like 5 categories. They are practical and relevant. They help to collect critical data but not overlooked. They are kept to a minimum because we know that we don't want to put too much extra significant work on the stuff, and they can be qualitative and quantitative. So on this slide, you can see a set of 8 mandatory indicators according to different categories. For example, like policy and implementation, training and responsibilities, climate change adaptation and resilience, green gas emissions, land release outcomes, procurement and supply chain, local partnership and community outreach, and the last one is resourcing. So here you can see as an example of the reporting indicator number 1, it's policy and implementation. And here there are like 4 subcategories, and we start with a subcategory 1 when the program is looking if they have environmental and climate policy and what stage it's developed. Is it entry level, level 1, or it's level 2 intermediate, or it's an optimal level? It's completely okay to put 0 if your program is not at the stage of implementation of any of the subcategories, because when you fill in this form, you are just evaluating where you stand now and where you to move forward. So the next example is a reporting indicator number 3, is a climate change adaptation. You see here there are less subcategories, there are just 3, not 4. So the number of subcategories varies depending on the indicator. And as I said, they are all mandatory to fill in for the program. And these indicators, they aim to identify where there may be gaps in the existing capacity of the program. They highlight well-performed programs and potential lessons learned that could be shared with others. They could help with spreading the innovation. They show what has been implemented and hasn't been used or done before. And also they help to indicate what could be done differently and see the future improvements. So, yeah. This is the website where you will be able to download all the materials for the Greenfield tool and for the reporting indicators. We developed videos for different steps of implementing Greenfield tool. They are on the YouTube, and there is also a link from this website where you can go there and watch different short videos. Of course, it's quite a big burden to take such a new task, but there are so many positive outcomes, and we as organizations that are standing behind developing this, we are happy to communicate, and if someone would like to take it, we would be happy to discuss it and help to develop the plan for the programs to implement it. And also, I want to mention as well that all resources are on the EIMA working group. It's Environmental Impact Mine Action Group, which is open for everyone to join, for organizations that are interested in the area environment and mine action. We have regular meetings every 2 months where we discuss everything what's happening in the field for people to stay updated and sharing their experiences and good practices and move forward together in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. So that's it from our speakers today. I'm going to throw it open to the floor now if anyone's got any questions or comments they would like to ask. Yes, please.
Hassan Parto from UN Environment Program. Thanks very much for all the excellent presentations. I have a question on if you have looked at the toolkit or maybe more broadly on the potential chemical contamination risks from explosive ordnance disposal and how that would be assessed. And this is a question that is being posed or raised by countries more and more. So I would just, if there's any feedback on the chemical contamination risks from the explosive residues and the heavy metals there. Be interesting to hear your views on including that in assessments. Thanks.
Yes, the tool does include that because we're looking at releases to land, to soil and water. But obviously this is a broad, across the range issue with respect to detonation and disposal techniques and the risks of that imposes to contamination with respect to metals or explosive residues or other organic materials. And MPA have done some sampling as part of that. And obviously that's part of the work that FAO have been doing as well in Ukraine, the soil sampling work. And there's a lot of there's been a lack of data, and this data sets are now being brought together. And obviously it's all very, the issue with that, it's very site specific, depending on what setting it is and how the land's going to be used. So there's not kind of a blanket answer for that, but it's part of overall assessment and criteria, looking at what actually is there and how the land will be used and who will be exposed or what would be exposed to that contamination. So I'm afraid it's not an easy answer, but yes, it's flagged in the tool, but this is a much broader discussion to be had across the sector as to the risks from open detonations and open burnings and what alternative approaches can be used for sensitive environments. Thank you.
Any other questions? Would any of our speakers like to make any final remarks?
Can I just put the last slide on as well?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, there's one
a
last
final
slide.
slide.
No, last slide, sorry. Alex, can you just...
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Sorry. And again. Yeah, I just wanted to, again, share this QR code. This organisation, Nicole Foundation, they're actually... so last year there was the UNEA resolution on assessment of environmental assessment for conflict-affected areas and environmental recovery, and they're pulling together data, information on what organisations have environmental data or on the ability to collect environmental data. So they're asking for inputs of your experience and the deadlines for May. So I just wanted to share that, so if you could maybe contribute to that, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So thank you all for joining us today. And, I really encourage you to go to the EMA website. All the Greenfield tool resources are there. I think we've seen that there have been some really important developments within the sector, but it's clear that there's still work to do in terms of raising awareness and building capacity, building partnerships within the sector with environmental experts outside the sector, collaborating with local communities. And I think, ultimately clearing the land, yes, but also supporting the recovery of that land to enable sustainable future use for those affected communities is clearly really paramount. So thank you to all our speakers today, and thanks again for joining us.